Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Natalia, and I am a manager for the Rockefeller Foundation Convening and Networks team. Thank you all so much for joining us for this latest RF breakthrough. I'll be moderating today's discussion on shaking up systems with big bets. Over the next 5 years, the Rockefeller Foundation is investing $1 billion to help the world address climate change. We know that without meaningful climate action, development gains made in the recent decades will be wiped out by 2050. That means 200 million people could go displaced. 3.4 billion could become food insecure, and billions more would be exposed to increasing disease and other health risks. That's why we're working hard to accelerate transformation in the world's food, health, finance, and energy systems. For this episode of RF Breakthrough, we'll look at system change and how we can lay the groundwork for a sustainable and equitable future. For this discussion, I am very excited to be joined by 4 amazing leaders in climate action. They are all members of the Rockefeller Foundation's inaugural Big Bets Climate Fellowship, which is supporting leaders working in Latin America and the Caribbean, where climate change is threatening the lives and livelihoods of over 600 million people. First, I'd like to welcome Daniela Orofino, the Executive Director of Amazônia de Pé. Amazônia de Pé is working to turn 57 million hectares of Brazil's undesignated public lands into indigenous territories, national parks, and conservation units. To achieve this bold vision, Daniela brought together a coalition of over 300 organizations to protect the Amazon rainforest and its people. We're also joined by Reinhold Galmetze. Reinhold is the founder of the Center for Climate Crime Analysis, a nonprofit combining law, data, and technology to support climate justice. CCCA leverages data science to analyze and prevent illegal deforestation in South America, which has had drastic impacts on the Amazon rainforest. He's working to expand their impact across Latin America and beyond. Also with us is Mariola Reyes Cruz, the co-founder and executive director of the Fideicomiso de Tierras Comunitarias para la Agricultura Sostenible, an agroecology commons. After Hurricanes Irma and Maria devastated the Puerto Rican islands in 2017, Mariola created FITICAS, Puerto Rico's first agrarian community land trust. The organization is transforming food systems through long-term land use agreements and governance structures to support traditionally marginalized farmers. And finally, we're joined by Felipe Vilela. Felipe is the head of the Land Banking Group's work in Latin America. Through the group, he's helping use innovative financial mechanisms to scale sustainable practices. By rewarding land stewards for regenerative practices, Felipe's work is helping incentivize companies to invest in regenerative agriculture and natural preservation. Thank you all so much for being here and to share your thoughts and insights. For everyone tuning in the live stream, please join our conversation by commenting below or posting with the hashtag RF Breakthrough. We want to hear your thoughts too. And to start, I'm going to call on you, Dani. I'm very interested in your project. One of the most interesting features for me is how you took an existing legal tool, which was not necessarily designed for climate protection and preservation, and you made it into the key lever of change for your work. So I would love if you could talk a little bit more about your big bet and how you're using the Public Bill Initiative. Also, for the audience that it's not Brazilian, just give us a little bit of an explanation of what the Public Bill is.
Thank you, Natalia. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. Amazônia de Pé biggest goal is to protect all public undesignated forests in the Amazon region in Brazil. We have nowadays in Brazil almost 60 million hectares of public forests that have not been designated for protection. And it's in these territories where we have the highest deforestation rates in the Amazon right now. So our big bet is to protect those forests by designating them to protected legal status in Brazil, such as the creation of indigenous territories, conservation units, quilombolas territories, and national parks. It's a big bet, but the way that we are doing it is by creating a nationwide grassroots movement for the protection of the Amazon and its peoples. We believe that we need to create nationwide public support to this idea so that we can conquer this public policy and make it durable and make it less vulnerable to the alternation of powers and governments in Brazil. And to build this nationwide public support, we decided to use this initiative, which is called the Public Demand Bill. It's something that Brazil's constitution have. It's a participative way of the people writing its own laws and presenting it to Congress. To make it possible, we need to gather 1.5 million physical signatures in paper. So it's a really bold way of participating in politics, but doing it by the people and with the people. And we chose to do it because we know that to create a campaign that is able to collect 1.5 million physical signatures, we need to create a grassroots movement. And that is our biggest goal. We don't want to advocate for these public policies just talking to the government or to Congress. We want to do it with mobilization because we believe that that is the way to make this policy effective and long-term and not being able to be changed when we have a new president or a new Congress or a new government. So that's why we are building this grassroots movement with volunteers all over Brazil, collecting the signatures and making this theme a subject in schools, in universities, in churches, in family dinners, in family lunches, and making it a subject of our dialogue in Brazil right now. That is the big bet that we are doing.
Thank you, Dani. This is really great. I can imagine many challenges, but can you talk a little bit about what are the challenges of what I'm calling hacking the system? So the mechanism was there, and you decided to leverage this mechanism to something that for climate protection. What are the benefits of leveraging on existing tools, and what are perhaps the biggest challenges to adapt and leverage this mechanism?
I think that this tool, even though it's a democratic way of people writing their own bills, it's a really hard way of writing our own bills. Like collecting 1.5 million signatures, it's more than we need to create a party in Brazil. So it's easier to create a political party in Brazil. You need to have less signatures than you need to have to present a proposition of a bill to Congress. So even though it is democratic, it's really hard to reach it. So it's really hard to hack the system. But like the difficulty and the challenging aspect of it is why we chose this way of mobilization. Just because we know that we need to force ourselves to make this a subject outside of the social environmental field, outside of the activism field. We need to make something that Brazilians know. Right now, I think that our biggest challenge is that Brazilians don't know that we have public forests in the Amazon region. This isn't something that it's common sense, that people know that we own, as Brazilian people, we own 57 millions of public forests in the Amazon that are being destroyed right now. I think that creating this awareness, national awareness in a country as huge as Brazil, that has different relationships with the Amazon. We have the ones that live in the Amazon region. We have the ones that don't live in the Amazon region and not necessarily understand the importance of the Amazon. We have different narratives carrying around the country about the importance of nature conservancy right now. So making this national awareness that people know that we have this richness and that we need to protect it, that it is at risk, I think it's the biggest challenge. And if we don't do this, there's no way we're gonna gather 1.5 million physical signatures. So this really challenging kind of participating process, it's what's pushing us to go further and to have more bold ideas of how we can talk to different Brazilians about the importance of protecting these public lands.
Thank you, Dani. This is great. Marioga, I would like to go to you next. So while Dani is hacking the system, your project really shakes things up by completely reframing the concept of land ownership. Can you explain to us what a community land trust is and how it contributes to climate resilience?
Yes, I'm here like vibrating with what Danny has and just explained to us. And yeah, I mean, in Puerto Rico, we are working to establish the first agrarian community land trust. And community land trusts are nonprofit corporations that hold land on behalf of a community that serve as a long-term steward and makes sure that the access to that land is equitable and just for the uses that the community has established. So it's a way of transforming our relationship to land, where it passes from being a product in the market to being a community asset. And one of the reasons why we think that community land trusts are key for climate resiliency, particularly when we're talking about food sovereignty and food security, is because farmers who are working with the land, taking care of the ecosystems, invest all their energies in the land, but they don't necessarily make enough money to retain tenure of the land. So protecting the land in perpetuity for generations of farmers is vital in Puerto Rico. There are 600 acres in Puerto Rico designated as agricultural land, but most of that land is in private hands. So we work with private owners to expand the imaginary of what is possible as land stewards and secure land for generations of farmers.
This is great, Marioga. And something I got the pleasure to meet you before, and there is something that really resonates on your way of talking about climate stewardship and climate resilience, and it's about how much is it centered in the equity experience and the equitable experience of land ownership. So, drawing a little bit from the lessons you're learning at Fiticas, could you share with us a bit more on what are the systems that we need to put in place to make sure that we're protecting the people that are most vulnerable as we think about climate resilience and mitigation and all the climate conversation?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the reality of farmers in Puerto Rico, for example, 76% of farms barely make $10,000 a year. That is not enough to live, even for one person in Puerto Rico or in the United States, for example. So part of what we recognize at Fiticas is that we need to protect land in perpetuity so that farmers can have tenure security that is not bounded by how much they produce year to year or season to season. Why? Because a farm could do very well one year and then next face severe droughts and 2 hurricanes, and they have to start from zero. So their tenure, their land security should not be tied to the logic of the market, but to the logic of resiliency and solidarity. And that's what CLTs can do. CLTs protect land for community use, and its structure is also based on democratic governance and participation. So what we're saying is we need to recognize that part of what we're living has to do with profound changes in how we relate to land and how we relate to each other. So as a CLT, we are basically transforming the idea of land and food as commodities and think about land as a basic material conditions to life and farmers as essential workers so that everybody can eat, right? Everybody eats, but all the risks are being carried by the farmers. So we recognize those risks and we try to, in a way, share those risks with them.
This is great. Thank you so much for sharing, Marioga. Reinhold, I would like to go to you next. And if we continue in this framework of hacking the systems and breaking the system, you are doing this very interesting work of hacking a judiciary system and really working as a bridge between the data collectors and people that are treating data and who's going to use them within the judiciary. So we can all better understand the potential of bringing these two universes together. Can you share a success story where your organization's data-driven approach led to action against illegal deforestation?
So we see, based on data available to us, that the main driver of deforestation in the Amazon is the cattle industry. And to address deforestation, we therefore target the system relevant packing companies and their downstream supply chains and their financial backers globally. So what we do is we access big data sets and we do remote sensing. We combine these data sets and then we can establish that cattle from illegally deforested land reaches the slaughterhouses, and then the meat reaches the meat packing companies, and then further down the supply chain to supermarket, export markets, etc. So to show you how the system works, based on an example, is that of a particular slaughterhouse in the state of Amazonas, and it's called Frigorífico Amazonas. We showed that they sourced cattle from illegally deforested land, and with that analysis, we produced an actionable case file and provided it to the federal prosecution authorities in the state of Amazonas. The federal prosecutors then, they launched a public civil action against the slaughterhouse and issued a fine of 43 million reais, which is a little under $8 million. That obviously then put pressure on the slaughterhouse, and they signed an agreement with the federal prosecutors that in Brazil is referred to as a TAC agreement. And in it, they committed not to buy or process or in any way commercialize beef that originates from illegally sourced land. And they also committed to repair the damage that they have caused in the land. So the prosecutor that received this information, he publicly stated that they couldn't have done it without us, because they said they have problems with their manpower, they have problems accessing technology, big data. It would take them years to do something like that. And he acknowledged that we provided this data in 40 days. So he said, this is an example of good cooperation between an NGO, as we are, and the prosecution authority, and that it should be scaled. And that is exactly what we are seeking to do, because there's so much potential for this and similar analysis that we can use to support, apply to support the prosecutors.
Thank you, Reinhold. I would, if I may, I would love to do a little bit of a futuring exercise here with you and hear from you what would look different in the world if these two universes were seamlessly collaborating. And I mean, if the folks that are doing data collection and treatment and the judiciary as a whole, if that was like a true collaboration there, what would that look like in the world? So how would the technological approach transform the way that we are enforcing climate justice?
But I would say that it would enable decision makers, both in the public and in the private sector, to make better decisions for the climate, for the forests, and for people. I believe that what we are seeing now is that we do have the tools, we have the mandates, and we have the laws in place, but there is a lack of enforcement. Prosecutors and judges don't enforce the law, and private corporations who have ESG standards and sustainability standards, they don't live up to their own standards, because I think in many cases, it is because they do not have access to the right data and the right support that would enable them to implement their mandates more effectively. So through our approach, we are trying to bridge that gap because new technologies and new data sources really give us the tools to do it. But let me just also make it clear, nothing of what we do will be done in isolation. We are part of a broader ecosystem that involves other initiatives like those that Daniela, Felipe, and Mariolga speak about. So if we cooperate, if we bring all our efforts together, I think data and technology can be one strong component as a force multiplier for our collective effort. How would the world look different? I genuinely believe that we have the ability to bring the deforestation and forest loss in Latin America to net zero by 2030. We have the tools to do that. There is political will to do it. And I think there is also momentum. There is momentum in increasing initiatives, and there is momentum if we see the numbers, the deforestation rates going down significantly in the last year. So we need to build upon that and put all our strengths together. And I think we can really achieve that result in a few years.
Thank you, Reinhold. It's very inspiring, and you make it feel possible. And I guess that this is the message here, the feeling of this is possible. And with that, I would like to pass it on to you, Felipe. So can you introduce us to your big bet and this concept of putting nature in the balance sheet? Because I feel like it goes really well with what we are hearing from the other three experts along the lines of like really shifting how we partner and with whom we partner and how we talk about preservation. So if you could walk us through this concept and how it aims to really revolutionize how we do financial valuation of natural assets.
Well, thank you so much, Natalia, for this opportunity at Rockefeller as well, for the big bets and having these wonderful fellows also with these incredible ideas. I'm really looking forward to meet all of you very soon. And it's been indeed a great journey on the work we do as land banking. So basically, I will explain, how do we put nature on the balance sheet. So first of all, land banking is a nature fintech. So we have developed a financial technology platform called Landler, which is basically has the goal and objective to reward every land steward on planet Earth for their natural capital. So we measure, manage, mitigate, and monetize natural capital so that we can scale regenerative land use globally and make sure that the standing forest is more profitable than any kind of agricultural intervention in terms, mostly, for example, in Brazil, the work we do for like with cattle, soy, and so on. So the primary goal for us is to really like say, hey, every land steward on Earth generates natural capital, ecosystem services, and they should start receiving rewards for it, for their preservation and regeneration efforts. So basically, we have built a market infrastructure that allows you to measure through satellite and AI all information regarding carbon, biodiversity, soil, and water. So a lot of things you cannot track over satellite, for example, soil carbon and some biodiversity indicators. So we do some ground truthing data collection as well to enrich the modeling so we can get as much accurate as data as possible on this natural capital information from carbon, biodiversity, soil, and water. Then we manage this natural capital account in a way to assess climate risks. So we identify, for example, in a certain region with a certain cash crop, for example, cocoa, has a very high or very low risk in terms of climate change with the extreme weather events. And then last but not least, we make this natural capital instead of being financed as a credit, like carbon credit or biodiversity credit, we're making this natural capital assets on the balance sheet. So companies have the option to include nature on the balance sheet to add corporate value, because today nature and ecosystem services is seen as a cost in the P&L of companies. So why the heck we're still considering nature a cost, a penalty, instead of being seen as a wealth, instead of seeing as added value. So we are basically working with multiple chartered accountants globally and using the accounting code IFRS EIS 38 so that nature can be accounted as intangible asset in the balance sheet. And why the hell CFOs and accountants of companies would actually put nature on the balance sheet? So 3 reasons. First, because there is today procurement risks globally. So like agricultural crops are under threat, like we see in Brazil, like soy yields reduction of 20%, coffee 25 2 years ago because of intensive frost. So climate is impacting agricultural crops globally. So procurement risk is a huge thing for agri-food corporates. So they are very concerned about, if they will have coffee, cocoa in 5 to 10 years from now. Secondly is the reporting requirements. So all this SPTIs, TFNDs, site platforms, and also like, the European Deforestation Regulations. So all companies that exports mainly to Europe and has all these kind of compliance and ESG standards, they need to care about the transparency and traceability of their ecosystem services and natural capital. And then third and not least is that most of these CFOs and accountants, and especially CEOs, they cannot, they're sick of seeing so much costs going from the P&L and expenses on sustainability and ESG, and just increase shareholders' pressure to start decreasing the budgets going in sustainability. Because if you want to quantify carbon in soil, if you want to quantify, like, if you want to give technical assistance to farmers on the ground, it's very costly. So if you move that expense from the P&L to the balance sheet, you add corporate value. And you also get more, access to financial support externally. So the overall business model and the overall concept that we have as land banking is to make sure that we have the legal and market infrastructure to allocate payment for ecosystem services in a form of asset in the balance sheet. So very exciting journey, but also with a lot of challenges. As you know, like it's very new, this concept of going beyond carbon, looking at biodiversity and water and soil as natural capital, and even more new when you talk about balance sheet, natural capital on the balance sheet. So really excited to be part of these big bets.
Yeah, very ambitious view, Felipe. And I think to make it even more ambitious, I want to ask you about the scalability. So how do you think those mechanisms can be scaled to maximize their reach and impact? And if you can give us a bit of numbers on what is happening now and what is the ambition for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great question, Natalia. So we're looking at Latin America, especially my work with land banking, very carefully. We have mainly focus in Brazil as well as Colombia and Mexico, but primarily Brazil. So I'm seeing Cerrado biome and Atlantic rainforest as key strategic regions for the scale up on the agri-food side of things. As we know, like Cerrado biome is 80% owned by private land, meaning that the agri-food sector is very strong and there is a high rate of degradation, soil degradation plus water scarcity. So we're putting a lot of efforts on the Cerrado biome. And so the primary focus of the work we do is on scaling across the Cerrado and Atlantic rainforest regarding to agriculture interventions. And when we look at the Amazon, we're looking at conservation rewards. So as also Danny mentioned, the conservation units is something that we're working on, measuring the ecological integrity of forest ecosystems so that we can reward indigenous quilombolas and communities for their preservation efforts. Still very early stage. I must admit that the conservation side of things, it's very, as Danny know very well, it's very complex to get the valuation of biodiversity. So we're in that process. But for agriculture, we've been scaling these solutions across a few millions of hectares. because the agriculture sector is much more aware of the climate risk because they depend on this particular crop. So, for example, a coffee company depends on coffee. If they don't have coffee for in 5 to 10 years from now, you know, they're running out of business. So the pain is much bigger. So what we're trying to do is to leverage the scalability across the agri-food companies so that they can see they can manage their portfolio of investment in natural capital to see which kind of suppliers has a negative or a positive natural capital balance. And then they can start investing and rewarding these land stewards for their natural capital so that we can build the proof of concept to go into the conservation field and say, hey, you know, you as agri-food company should also be worried about the lack of rain that comes from the Amazon. So even if you're supplying soy from Brazil, from Cerrado in Brazil, you're also benefiting indirectly from the rainforest in the Amazon. So we're trying to see how can we leverage like the agri-food sector to be also responsible and also like accountable to reward land stewards in communities in the Amazon rainforest. So that's a whole thing that we are now doing on the scaling up of land banking interventions across Latin America. And we see great traction in terms of size of land. But the great traction we want to see is not in the size of land, but it actually in the rewards, in money for farmers and communities, because that's the biggest, you know, like game changer is to build more resilience. So the focus is to build as much climate resilience to see less negative effects of climate change. I come from the south of Brazil, Rio Grande do Sul, which all of you know has been very impacted. The impacts of agriculture has been over 3 billion reais and even more. So yeah, we need to prepare ourselves for this new norm. And the way to do this is to avoid any more you know, nature loss. We need to reward land stewards for improving their sustainable land use. So yeah, I'm really excited about this journey and appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you, Felipe. I think this, like, what I would say that it feels to me like a very unifying thread on all of your projects is this ambition to fundamentally solve a problem. It's not about like doing incremental changes. It's about finding the root cause and solving a problem. And I know I love Heinhold's ambition and of getting to net zero deforestation by 2030. And I love to see all the structures that you're mentioning around this and how this feels possible. So I'm keeping an eye on the clock, but I guess I still have the time to ask a couple questions for you. And I guess the first one that it's for the whole group is around the systems change. So whether you're hacking the system or if you're breaking the system, it kind of feels like to fundamentally solve a problem, you really need to change the system that we are operating in. I would really love to hear from you either a tool, so either something that you have in your back pocket and it has a track record of having worked before in changing the system, or something that you see that it's like the fundamental challenge of altering or impacting systems. And I'll open the mic, whoever want to go first, just give a nudge. But yeah, I'll pass it on to the four of you to give me your take on what it takes to change a system.
I can give a shot, like to start. I mean, it's great to see also how, you know, all these concepts and these solutions that the four of us have, they cross-pollinate with each other, because I mean, in the end, it's all about like you know, better management of land use and preservation of rainforest. So in a way, we're seeing that companies are feeling more the pain of nature loss and, you know, of climate change. So it's for me, like, there's no way back. I mean, it's just like a step forward, like, and I think like we are all using different sort of technologies, legal frameworks, and to address this big challenge that we have ahead of us in Latin America, which is, yeah, deforestation, which is sustainable land use. And I feel like we're in a good timing right now because we're seeing that the nature, the risk is there, and it's being perceived. So there is more like willingness to pay, willingness to invest in solutions that address these issues. And therefore, we have more capacity to grow as not only organizations, but also like as a whole climate movement and nature movement. So I feel like we are kind of setting the scene to scale up these solutions in a way that we can mitigate all these risks. It's a very, of course, ambitious goals that we all have. So if we can get there, it's gonna be fantastic. But I feel like we are, exchanging these kind of solutions in a way to be more effective, the value proposition towards these organizations, and therefore we have much more, like a powerhouse to solve such issues. So for me, like we are setting we're on track in terms of like how we can optimize each other's work to shape these big bets.
I would like to add that there is something to be said about generating public accountability, not only from the private sector, the public sector, but also the private sector. And I think what we are doing is showing that more and more people are aware of the problems and that people are getting ready to jump to solutions, right? So I think that what we are all doing in a way is providing that space. So opening the roads so that people can not only see the problems, but see possible solutions. And I think that one of the things that could help this process is precisely that we are aiming to talking to a very broad diversity of publics, so that it starts to become sort of a new common sense that we need to protect Mother Nature, because at the end of the day, nature is going to shake things up, and is shaking things up, and is forcing the issue. The problem is, how are we going to face this issue? And we are providing exit strategies that are actually based on solidarity with the people who are most vulnerable and that we depend on. So I'm really excited about this, really.
If I may go next, we're not just changing the system. I think we are bending the system. We're playing the system for the good. Because, of course, we realize there are institutions, there are economic systems at place that cannot be destroyed. But we can really work with those systems to have much better outcome. And what I really like about what others have said, and going back perhaps to specifically what Felipe said, he is working on an incentive-based system to change behaviors. He is providing, so his initiative, he's providing positive incentives for the land stewards, for the corporate buyers to protect the forest instead of destroying it. And we complement it, we disincentivize bad behavior by creating legal, reputation, and ultimately financial risks. So think what the outcome could be if we coordinate the efforts, work together, we can really change behaviors, work within the systems to have much better outcomes at scale.
Just to finish the four of us, I completely agree with what you three have brought up. And I think that dialoguing with the first question that we were talking before this conversation, if we are optimists or not, and what gives us hope. I think that hearing the three of you makes me see that collaboration between different institutes, organizations, is crucial. And I think that is actually what makes me really excited about the fellowship, the Big Bets Fellowship, because we're going to have the experience of changing and changing information and strategies and building networks between us. And I think that if we're talking about changing systems, I was hearing Marioga, I think that right now we've finally reached the point in Latin America where climate change is something that people know that is happening, agree that is happening, are worried that is happening. It's not the same place that we were 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where this was more of a debate than of a certainty. And I think that now we have to catch this momentum and change the narrative. I think that there is a risk right now, even though people are more aware of climate change, there is a risk that climate change in itself, it's so scary that it can make people believe that there is nothing else we can do, that we've lost this race, that now that we finally realize that what is happening, it's too late. And I think that we have to change the narrative, pointing out solutions and paths. And I think that this is what all the projects here are doing, to make it possible to make farmers believe that they can have a good land use and provide food security in their country, make investors believe that nature is an asset, make data and the legal system work together, and make people understand that collective action and mobilization can also bring change. I think that this is something really important to do, to point out that we have solutions and make people hopeful that we still can do something about it and face the risk that what fear can demobilize sometimes, and how can we make them hope for a more equitable and just Latin America and more protected nature in Latin America also.
Daniela, I'll take your hook and I will go around the table and ask the rest of you, what is giving you hope? What is giving you optimism in the climate conversation? And maybe Felipe, I can start with you, and then we go to Marioga and we wrap up with you, Reinhold.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, three things quickly that is giving me hope. One is my son, that I have 1 year and 3 months old baby at home. And I wake up every day, even though he gets sick very often now. He's like, once he's smiling in the morning, is always start my day differently. So for me, that's the first thing. Second thing is that, you know, every nature climate issues nowadays is not within the ESG or sustainability manager anymore. It's with as the CFO or CEO. This is a matter of business continuity. So it's not a matter of like, you know, brand reputation anymore. So that's for me, like one thing that gives me a lot of hope. And the third thing is, I mean, like, look, we live in paradise. You know, I'm a big nature lover. I go to, you know, to the rainforest, to the waterfalls, like since I'm young. So I see that we have so much beauty around us, but also very complex. And I feel like we can actually, you know, like preserve this beauty, and working together. I trust that we can achieve that, you know, regeneration at scale. So these are the three things that gives me hope. Like my kid. The you know, the topics not lasting in sustainability, but also like the CEO, and then of course being around nature.
Marioga, what is giving you hope and optimism?
Well, I get hope from doing things with other people, like to working with other people on the issues that matter to us, and finding that there's more and more people committed to work towards sustainable, just, equitable solutions fills my heart. Also that I think we're at a moment in which we can actually broader the conversation that puts life and the sustainability of life at the center. So it's just not about this something external to us, but that we are part of life and sustainability in the planet. So that also gives me hope, because I think part of what we are carrying is that feeling of being separated, of being disconnected. And I think that connection is important so that we can actually work together and make a difference. And being outside, it also gives me a lot of hope, and seeing how nature insists, life insists, even after a disaster, life keeps going. And so that always gives me hope.
Thank you, Marioga. Reinhold, to wrap us up, what is giving you hope and optimism? Oh, I think you might be on mute. So let me. Perfect.
My optimism is driven by data. And I see that there is really a change. A lot of it is generally visible, but even more so is perhaps not in the public eye. I see that there are huge changes in how we create our energy. There are changes in the transportation sector. And there are massive changes also in how we are going about producing food and protecting forest and land. And I think we are really at the beginning of an exponential growth curve, and change will happen faster than many people believe. And I want specifically to address young people who are plagued by climate anxiety. This battle can be won, and it will be won. And we can together build a society and a future that is better than our past and our present.
This is perfect, Reinhold. Thank you so much. I feel like I often recur to this. I often come back to this example. I say to people that lived the HIV epidemic in the 80s, the problem looked unsolvable. It looked hopeless, but we came through, and we now have medicine and knowledge, and it looks like we are coming out of it. So I really hope that for people watching, this conversation gives them the feeling that this is only looking like an unsolvable problem, but that the climate crisis is solvable if we put our minds and energy and effort into solutions that are proven to really shake the systems and really drive action forward. And if I may, for me, what really brings me hope and optimism is this opportunity to be sitting around the table with people like you, who are working tirelessly to address the biggest challenge of our time. So I'm very grateful to share this time with you all. And for the folks that are watching us, Mariolga, Daniela, Felipe, and Reinhold are only 4 of the 16 fellows of the Big Bets Climate Fellowship, our inaugural cohort. If you want to know more about the fellows, you can check our website. And for those of you who are like me, feeling very inspired and are really feeling energized to tackle your own big bets, we invite you all to join the Rockefeller Foundation's Big Bets community. There you will gain access to tools and insights that you need to make large-scale change in your own community and the world beyond. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the 4 of you for your time with here and for all the incredible work that you do. Thank you.